Hey there, welcome back to a special edition here of the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And I'm John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast. I'm doing a special version of this for the hiring of Charles Lee as an assistant coach because this happened before we did our podcast, me and Howard Beck. So the true Monday podcast, the full 40-minute Monday podcast, is me and Howard Beck talking about the offseason. But this is a special kind of separate one just to give my thoughts on this this coaching staff that the Celtics are building here. Charles Lee, former associate head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, is going to be joining the Joe Mazzulla staff here in Boston. So now we know that Sam Cassell and Charles Lee are going to be joining this coaching staff. And to me, and I mentioned this on the other podcast, to me, this is a very clear message to the Celtics. We're building something for now. And Joe Mazzulla is getting super experienced types of coaching. So Sam Cassell adds 15 years of playing experience in the NBA, winning championships, 14 years now, going into his 15th year of coaching in the NBA, having coached some of the all-time best players. Lee comes in, having been in the league now this will be his 11th season, I believe. So he's been an assistant coach. Actually, no, his 11th season overall, his 9th season in the NBA. Starting out with Atlanta, going to Milwaukee, kind of going around with Budenholzer, winning a championship in Milwaukee with Budenholzer. So championship experience on the bench for Charles Lee, high level NBA coaching. Both former players. Lee played at Bucknell, and then he bounced around. He didn't make it into the NBA. He bounced around overseas for a few years before getting into coaching. He's only 38 years old. So he's a young guy. He brings that, level of credibility. He's another former guard. So a guy that has had to really kind of know the game to carve out a little professional career for himself. So he's a guy with experience. He's a guy with experience on the sidelines. The message to Joe Mazzulla is here's all the experience that you need on the bench. You've got to listen to these guys. These are your crutches in a lot of ways. We're giving you the one thing that we know you don't have on your own because you've only been coaching now for one season. You don't have the full depth of knowledge. When I call Joe Mazzulla a paint by numbers coach, is because that's all he's been able to do. Start with these are the numbers I'm supposed to follow. And the numbers bring you to a certain place, and the numbers can get you pretty far. You can paint a nice little thing, paint by numbers, but you're not an artist necessarily. These guys can kind of take him into being an artist, and they have the depth of knowledge. They can be sounding boards. They can kind of be guidance for him. Now when you sit around the table and say, how should we approach this stuff? Joe has guys who are specifically here to support him, specifically hired to support him, and who have tons and tons of experience from varying levels of playing ability and varying levels of success as assistant coaches. They're also sought after potential head coaches. So this isn't about building a long-term staff. This is about, Joe, you don't have the experience. We're giving you the experience, whether it's for a year, 2 years, 3 years. That's going to be, even if it's short-term, that's fine. The goal here, and I keep saying the Celtics have a 2-year window, with this upcoming season being the final year of Jaylen Brown's old contract, going into the first year of what's I assume is going to be Jaylen Brown still here on his new contract, before you get into year one of Jayson Tatum on his new contract. And you have to figure out, are we paying $100 million to two guys, these two guys? You had 2 years to put this all together, figure it out, win a championship. Can you win 2? Are the Celtics going to keep it rolling after that? Or are they going to be satisfied winning a championship or more than one? I don't know. But you've got this 2-year window to figure out what's happening here. And then next summer, these guys could be gone. Lee was a finalist in Toronto and Detroit. Will he be part of the next head coaching crop next summer? We'll have to wait and see. But this isn't a staff that's going to be put together for the long haul. This is going to be a staff that's put together for the now. The time for the Celtics to win is now. And it's not lost on me that these are 2 former players, 2 black head coaches. It's very important for Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum to see they're building a staff with these guys, that the diversity, added diversity in the NBA coaching ranks is something that's been important to Tatum, to Brown. And so the Celtics are speaking to their superstars through these coaching hires. Very capable, very successful head coaches, but with a specific kind of shared characteristic of former players, guys that Tatum and Brown can relate to, that they can talk to. That's an important element for this. It's part of, I think, a concerted effort for this front office, Brad Stevens, to put together the absolute optimal coaching staff to say, there's no more excuses here. You guys are old enough now. You're all in your mid-20s or older. All of these core guys are in their mid-20s or older, with the exception of Grant Williams, if you consider him a core guy. They're not kids anymore. This is a coaching staff now that is unified behind Joe Mazzulla. The team is unified behind Joe Mazzulla. The front office is unified behind Joe Mazzulla. This is it. You've got the types of coaches that you want, the types of coaches that you need. This is a roster that's stacked from top to bottom. So I think the message is really clear. These are 2 incredibly good coaching hires. Exactly what the team needs, exactly what Mazzulla needs, exactly what the Stars need. These are 2 really good hires. The message is clear. What the Celtics are trying to do. You got a very small window now to win this championship. And as you'll hear in the podcast with Howard Beck, the Celtics will very likely be one of the, as soon as the finals end, the Celtics will be one of the perceived contenders, front runners next season. So that's something that is not lost on the front office. This is a small window. You got to cash in. The message is clear to the team. So good hires. I'm sure there's going to be more, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more of the same type of experience that the Celtics, they're just loading this team with experience. I'm very curious to see where they go. Do they go with a different perspective to add kind of like a different voice into this mix? I think the focus for this team, we're all worried about the players this offseason. It's very obvious. This team is focused on putting together a coaching staff that will be as bulletproof as possible. Make sure you're subscribed to the Locked On Celtics podcast. This is a bonus kind of quickie 10-minute podcast. The full Monday podcast with Howard Beck comes out later for your Monday consumption. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you would share the podcast and tell everybody that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.